In 1945, both nations lay in ruins. Both had caused unimaginable destruction. Both made a promise to the world, and to themselves. Never again. They rewrote their constitutions. They disbanded their empires. They handed their security to America and promised to stay small, stay quiet, and stay peaceful. For 80 years it worked. And then the world changed. And now both nations are doing something that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. They are rearming. Openly. Aggressively. Together. This is the story of how the world's two most famous pacifist nations became military powers again, and why it changes everything. To understand what's happening in 2026, you have to understand what happened in 1945. Germany and Japan didn't just lose World War II. They were rebuilt from the ground up, with military weakness written into their DNA. In Germany, the new Federal Republic embedded itself inside NATO. Its army existed, but only as one piece of a collective Western defense. No German general would ever command alone again. In Japan, Article 9 of the new constitution went even further. It didn't just limit the military, it renounced war itself as a sovereign right. Japan would have self-defense forces. Not an army. Not a navy. Self-defense. That was the word chosen deliberately. For decades this model held. America provided the nuclear umbrella. NATO held Europe. The US-Japan Security Treaty held Asia. Germany and Japan got rich. They stayed quiet. And the world called it peace. But that peace had a hidden cost. Germany and Japan were protected, but dependent. They had no real ability to defend themselves alone. They trusted that America would always be there. And for 80 years, America was. Then came February 2022. Russia invaded Ukraine. And something broke, not just on the battlefield, but in the minds of German politicians, military planners, and ordinary citizens. Germany had a word for it. Zeitenwende. It means historic turning point. The German Chancellor stood up in Parliament and announced that the old era was over. Germany would rearm. At almost exactly the same time, on the other side of the world, Japan was watching China's military pressure around Taiwan intensify. And Japan made its own quiet but historic decision. It was time to build a military that could actually fight. Let's start with Germany. The numbers alone tell a story that would have seemed impossible 10 years ago. In 2025, Germany's defense budget was 86 billion euros. By 2029, it is projected to hit 152 billion euros. Nearly double. In 4 years. But this isn't just about money. Germany is buying things it hasn't bought since the Cold War. Air defense systems. Long-range missiles. Drones. Ammunition stockpiles. It is rebuilding the industrial and military foundation that was quietly allowed to decay for 30 years. And Germany isn't staying in Europe. Its military, the Bundeswehr, has been deploying to the Indo-Pacific, participating in exercises near Japan, sending warships through waters it hasn't sailed in decades. Berlin's message is now explicit: Asian security is European security. What happens near Taiwan affects Germany. What happens in the South China Sea affects German supply chains. The world is too connected to pretend otherwise. Germany is no longer just a cautious NATO member. It is becoming a security actor that wants a role in the wider global balance of power. That is a sentence that would have been unthinkable in 2015. It is rearming alongside the only other nation on earth that truly understands what it means to rebuild a country from total defeat: Japan. Think about that. Two nations that fought on the same side in World War II, against the very countries they are now partnering with, are now building a military alliance together. History doesn't repeat. But sometimes it absolutely rhymes. Now let's look at Japan. Because what Japan is doing is arguably even more significant, and far less covered in Western media. Japan's official Defense Buildup Program, a government document, states explicitly that by 2027, Japan aims to gain the ability to take primary responsibility for dealing with invasions against its territory. Read that again. Primary responsibility. Japan. Alone. This is a revolution in Japanese defense thinking. Japan is not just buying more weapons. It is buying counterstrike capability, long-range missiles that can hit targets before they hit Japan. For a country that renounced war in its constitution, this is seismic. The shopping list is extraordinary. Standoff missiles, integrated air and missile defense, unmanned systems, drones, cyber defense, space resilience, electronic warfare. Japan is not building a self-defense force anymore. It is building a war-fighting force. And the trigger for all of this is visible on any map. China's growing military pressure around Taiwan, North Korea's missile tests, and a creeping uncertainty about whether Washington will always answer the phone when Tokyo calls. Japan is not doing this in isolation either. It is building a network of partners. Australia, the UK, South Korea, India, and now, most symbolically, Germany. The country it once fought alongside against the Allies is now its closest new security partner. In July 2024, Germany and Japan signed an ACSA, an acquisition and cross-servicing agreement. In plain language, their militaries can now share supplies, fuel, ammunition, and services with each other. It is the logistical foundation of a real military partnership. So what does all of this actually mean? Here is the deeper strategic picture that most news coverage misses entirely. This is not a return to the militarism of the 1930s. Germany and Japan are not building empires. They are not threatening their neighbors. What they are building is something different, and in some ways more consequential. They are building network deterrence. The concept is this: no single nation needs to be powerful enough to win a war alone. Instead, a network of allied nations, all interoperable, all connected, all capable, makes an attack so costly that no adversary would dare attempt it. Germany brings industrial scale, NATO credibility, and European political weight. Japan brings advanced technology, a frontline position in Asia, and decades of quiet but serious military expertise. Together they represent something new: middle power deterrence at global scale. And here is something that should stop every American viewer for a moment. For 80 years, the United States paid, in money, in troops, in strategic attention, to defend both Germany and Japan. That era may be quietly ending. And America may not fully realize it yet. What Germany and Japan are building suggests that both nations have quietly decided they can no longer bet their survival on Washington's consistency. That is not a criticism of America. It is a strategic calculation, made coldly, rationally, and with historical awareness. Europe and Asia are merging into one strategic system. What happens in the Taiwan Strait echoes in Berlin. What happens in Ukraine echoes in Tokyo. The world has gotten smaller and more dangerous, and Germany and Japan are the clearest proof of that. Here is the question nobody in Washington or Brussels wants to answer out loud: if Germany and Japan, the two nations most scarred by the horrors of modern warfare, feel the need to rearm at this speed and at this scale, what does that tell us about where the world is heading? The answer, uncomfortable as it is, seems to be this: the post-war order, the system of rules, alliances, and assumptions that kept major powers from fighting each other since 1945, is under more strain than at any point in living memory. Germany and Japan are not villains in this story. They are canaries in a coal mine. When the world's two most committed pacifist nations feel compelled to rebuild their militaries, pay attention. History is trying to tell you something. Their military rebirth is real. It is visible. It is accelerating. And it will reshape the balance of power in both Europe and Asia over the next decade in ways we are only beginning to understand. If this gave you a new way of seeing the world, subscribe to Borders and Barricades. Because this story is only just beginning.